Maya Williams felt her world tilt the moment her bright yellow beanie slipped from her head and hit the dull blue carpet of the aisle. 1 second she was settling in for the safety demonstration, and the next she was frozen as the flight attendant yanked her hat off with one sharp motion. The attendant's tight blonde ponytail bobbed as she held Maya's hat well out of reach. Her lips pressed into a thin line of authority. The cabin went silent, every eye turning to witness the young woman's public shaming. Maya's heart pounded in her chest, her breath catching as she stared up at the attendant. The tears threatened, not from sadness, but from the sting of humiliation and outrage. This wasn't about a hat anymore. This was about being made to feel less because of who she was and how she looked. For a moment she remembered her dad's words before he moved across the country 3 years ago, telling her to hold her head high, no matter how the world tried to knock her down. Now half the cabin seemed to be enjoying her discomfort. "I told you 3 times, the attendant snapped, voice carrying over the hushed seats. "Hats are not permitted during safety demonstrations." Her foot slid forward to block Maya's trembling hand from retrieving the beanie. In that instant, Maya felt the full weight of that rule bearing down on her like a weapon. "You can have it back when we reach cruising altitude," the attendant added, as though she were doing Maya a favor by withholding her warmth and her sense of self. A white-haired gentleman in the seat next to Maya cleared his throat. His voice cracked with age and kindness as he said, "She's just a kid, ma'am." He offered to hand back the hat, but the attendant waved him off. "Sir, I'm following company policy," she said, tone flat and final, as if policy were a shield that justified any cruelty. Maya swallowed hard, her eyes stinging, but she refused to look away. Then the cabin doors burst open at the front, and a woman in a charcoal suit moved down the aisle with the determination of someone used to getting results. High heels clicked on the linoleum floor in a steady rhythm that seemed to command attention. Her hair was pulled back tight, her suit impeccably tailored, but it was her voice that silenced the attendant and the rest of the cabin alike. "Flight Attendant Breslin," she said, reading the name tag without raising her voice. "Step aside." In that moment, the power shifted. The attendant's color drained from her cheeks and her posture snapped from superiority to submission. Maya looked past her at the woman's face, eyes sharp and steady, lips set with authority. The woman turned toward the passengers and spoke over the murmur. "I'm Diana Williams, CEO of Atlantic Skyways. This is my daughter, Maya." The relief that flooded Maya was almost unbearable. She felt her mother's presence like a shield settling around her. She looked up at Deanna and saw not just a seal, but a mother who would never let anyone steal her dignity. The rest of the cabin sat frozen, caught between surprise and admiration, as Deanna reached down, took Maya's hat, and placed it gently back on her head. That intervention was Maya's first taste of revenge, sweet in its simplicity. The attendant, once so confident, now glanced around as if expecting someone to back her up, but found no allies. The silence in the cabin said everything. This was a confrontation that no one could ignore. But to understand why this felt so momentous, you have to go back 12 hours earlier, to the penthouse apartment on the 43rd floor of a Manhattan skyscraper. Diana Williams stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the sunrise set the city ablaze in gold and pink. She drank her coffee slowly, reheated 3 times in a sleek white mug, running through her board presentation in her head. The Atlantic Skyways annual meeting in Chicago was her chance to prove that a woman of color could lead a major airline and change the industry. Her thoughts flicked to her daughter. Maya would be flying alone for the first time in months, 3,000 miles to Los Angeles through 3 time zones, all on her own. Diana called out, "Maya, did you pack your charger and your allergy medicine?" Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing that beloved yellow beanie and dragging a suitcase so big it looked like she was moving out for good. She was 17 and already towering over her mother, with her father's athletic build and her own fierce confidence. She grabbed an apple from a glass bowl and took a big bite. "Mom, relax," she said, crunching the apple. I've flown back and forth since I was 14. I've got my music, my books, and enough snacks to survive a small apocalypse." She winked, flashing the kind of grin that had melted away her father's stress time and again. Diana smiled despite herself and tucked a curl behind Maya's ear. "I know, but this is the first time you're flying since that hearing," she said, voice softening. 6 months ago, Diana's ex-husband, Marcus, had moved to Los Angeles for his dream job and refused to let go of her parenting time. The custody and scheduling fights had soured the co-parenting relationship. Diana feared this trip would spark another round of conflict she couldn't control. Maya washed down her apple with a swig of bottled water. "Dad's not mad at me. He's mad at how the courts work." She glanced at the framed photo on the counter of all three of them, taken on the beach when Maya was 10. "And besides," Maya added with a shrug, "my new place is only 20 minutes from Venice Beach. I'm kind of excited to see it." Diana pressed her lips together to keep from saying something she might regret. Back when Maya was little, Marcus had been the fun parent, taking her to playgrounds and letting her stay up late. Diana had been the responsible one, homework, curfews, doctor's appointments. She worried that time and distance would make their roles even more rigid. "I'm just making sure you're prepared," she said carefully. Maya crossed the kitchen and wrapped Deanna in a hug so tight Deanna almost dropped her coffee. "I promise, Mom. I'll text when I land," she whispered. "I love you." "I love you too," Diana replied, breathing in the familiar scent of coconut shampoo and teenage rebellion. 20 minutes later, they stepped into the elevator in matching black pumps. Deanna checked her briefcase. Contracts, agenda, notes, pen that actually worked. Every detail mattered. She looked at her daughter's yellow beanie and gave it a gentle nudge. "Call me if you need anything," she said, "and tell your dad when you land." "I will," Maya said, rolling her eyes but grinning. "Don't worry, CEO Mom." The elevator doors opened onto the marble lobby. James, the doorman, tipped his hat and nodded to Diana. "Your car's ready, ma'am." "Thank you, James." Diana turned to Maya. "Be careful walking to the curb." Maya waved as Diana climbed into the back seat of a sleek black sedan. The driver closed the door and off they went, weaving through morning traffic toward JFK Airport. Diana arranged her documents and dialed her executive assistant. "The meeting's confirmed for 9:30, she said, then glanced in the rear-view mirror at her daughter standing by the curb. Maya gave her a quick wave before turning to check her boarding pass on her phone. As the car accelerated, Deanna felt a twist of unease in her stomach. Maya had flown alone before, but something about today felt different. The sky above the city was cloudless and the taxi horned at a cab that cut them off, but Deanna's mind was somewhere else. On a cold airplane aisle where her daughter might stand alone and be judged. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles, Marcus Williams closed his laptop and rubbed his eyes. His new apartment was chaos, half-unpacked boxes scattered across the living room floor. He ran a hand through his crew-cut hair and muttered, "Why did she have to move so far?" He glanced at his phone. A text. "Just got in the car, heading to the airport. Can't wait to see you. Love, Maya." His chest warmed at her message. No matter how tense things got with Diana, Maya had that way of making everything right. He tapped out a quick reply. "Drive safe, kiddo. I'll meet you at baggage claim with your favorite smoothie. Love you." The doorbell rang and Marcus opened the door to find his neighbor, Elena Rodriguez, holding a potted succulent. "Housewarming gift?" she said, her dark eyes kind behind stylish glasses. "I heard you moved in." Marcus laughed, gesturing at the boxes. "Thanks. I'm Marcus, apartment 4B. Elena, 4C, she said. "We get together for drinks on the rooftop every Friday. You should join us." "I'd like that," Marcus said, setting the plant on an unpacked coffee table. "My daughter's flying in today, but next time, I'd love to come." Elena smiled warmly and turned away. Marcus closed the door and leaned against it, the succulent in his hand a reminder that community still existed, even in a city of strangers. He looked around at the chaos and thought about Maya's beaming face. She would arrive in a few hours and he would be there to greet her. Back on the plane, Maya's yellow beanie was snug on her head once more. She glanced at her mother's steady figure in the aisle. The flight attendant's lips were pressed into a line so tight you could see the strain in her jaw. Every passenger felt the shift. Maya settled back into her seat, a fierce sense of belonging warming her chest. In that moment, she knew she wasn't just a kid on a plane. She was Maya Williams, daughter of an airline CEO and the kind of young woman who refused to be silenced or shamed. And thanks to her mother, the woman who held the power of Atlantic skyways in her hands, Maya's beanie stayed exactly where it belonged. Marcus set the succulent on the kitchen counter and glanced at the clock. He needed to leave in 20 minutes if he was going to meet Maya's flight on time. He'd mapped the route through Los Angeles traffic twice already, factoring in the usual slowdowns on the I-405 and the bottleneck at the airport exits. Each minute that ticked by felt like a reminder that he might fail her again. His phone buzzed, and he braced himself for another lecture from Diana. Instead, the caller ID showed his boss. "Marcus," Richard said, voice crackling over the speaker. "I hate to call on your day off, but the Jensen clients showed up a day early and they're demanding to see the revised models today." Marcus closed his eyes. "Richard, my daughter's flight lands in 3 hours. I can't—" "I know," Richard interrupted, "but this could be the biggest contract of the year. Look, I promise it won't take more than an hour. Walk them through the blueprints and you'll still have time to make the airport shuttle." Marcus ran his hand through his hair. He pictured Maya, all of 17, standing at the TSA checkpoint with that yellow beanie perched on her head, waiting. She'd been so proud of that hat ever since her dad gave it to her on her 14th birthday. Yellow because it matched her sunshine personality, he had said. And now he was about to make her wait again. "Fine," Marcus said, voice tight. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, but I have to leave by 2:30, no excuses." "Understood," Richard said. "I owe you one." Marcus hung up, grabbed his portfolio and tossed on a sport coat. Before stepping out the door, he texted Maya, "Slight change of plans, could be cutting it close to meet your flight. If I'm late, wait at baggage claim. Love you." He locked the door and headed to his car, chest tightening with guilt. Diana's voice echoed in his mind. "Some things never change, do they, Marcus?" He shoved the thought away and climbed into the driver's seat, determination and dread warring in his gut. At JFK's Terminal 4, Maya stood in the TSA line, bouncing on the balls of her feet. The line moved at a snail's pace, each passenger peeling off belts, shoes, electronics, while she checked her flight status one more time. On-time departure, on-time arrival, perfect weather. She'd texted her dad 30 minutes earlier and hadn't heard back. Not unusual, he was always losing signal or buried in work, but combined with the earlier caution that he might be running late, it stung. She slipped her phone into her backpack and placed her sneakers, feet bare on the cold floor, into the bin. She watched her items disappear into the X-ray machine and sighed as she stepped through the scanner. In the reflective glass partition, she saw herself. Yellow beanie, oversized gray sweatshirt, black leggings, scuffed white sneakers. The look of a teenager on the move. She touched the beanie, thinking of her dad's words, "Hold your head high." She grabbed her things on the other side and shouldered her backpack, walking toward the gate. Families and business people streamed past. Some glanced at her casually, others whispered behind hands or shot sideways looks. She felt eyes on her skin, her hair, her hat. The sting of the flight attendant's cruelty from the morning gnawed at her. Hats aren't allowed during safety demos, they said, but she wondered if it was really about rules or about reminding her she didn't belong. Up ahead, Maya spotted a familiar silhouette. Tall, poised, charcoal suit, hair in a sleek bun. Her heart leaped when she realized it was her mother. "Mom," she called, quickening her pace. Diana turned, surprise flickering across her face. "Maya, what are you doing here? I thought your gate was in Terminal 4. It is, Maya said, catching her breath. I'm headed there now. But what are you doing here? Isn't your Chicago flight boarding soon? Diana checked her watch. In about 40 minutes, our original plane had a mechanical issue, so they moved us here. I was just checking in. Her voice was steady, but Maya caught the tension in her jaw. Maya adjusted her beanie and forced a grin. Everything okay? You look worried. Diana studied her daughter's face. Dad texted he might be late to pick you up. He said something about a last-minute meeting. A flicker of disappointment crossed Deanna's face. I'm sure he'll make it, and if not, you know how to get a taxi to his place, right? Mom, I'm 17, not 7. I can handle an airport to apartment. It's 2 miles, tops. Maya's tone was light, but her chest ached. She didn't want to sound defensive, but it hurt to hear her own independence questioned. Diana nodded, concern softening her features. Of course you can. Text me when you land, okay? And if anything happens, call me immediately. I will. Maya brushed aside the reminder. She'd heard it 100 times, but part of her felt grateful that someone cared this much. Diana glanced at the display board. That's my flight boarding now. I should go. She pulled Mia into a quick hug, brief but fierce, and turned toward her gate. Maya watched her mother retreat into the crowd. She felt the tug of 2 worlds, her mother's structured universe of boardrooms and policies, and her father's more chaotic, creative life. She wiped a tear that had slipped free and squared her shoulders. She had to finish this journey alone now. 35,000 feet above the Great Plains, Diana sat by the window, the patchwork of farmland below looking like a green quilt. She'd just sent an urgent text to Marcus. I'm on a flight to Chicago for an emergency board meeting. You need to contact Maya yourself. Please. The flight attendant, Teresa, appeared with a water bottle. Can I get you anything else, Ms. Williams? By the way, your new family leave policy has been such a relief. My sister just had her first baby, and those 6 months of paid leave changed everything for us. Diana smiled warmly. I'm glad it helped. Please give her my congratulations. Teresa moved on. Deanna's phone buzzed. Another text from her assistant. Emergency board call in 20 minutes. Thompson is threatening to block the LA expansion unless route allocations are revised. Needs immediate CEO approval. 5 years ago, Stanley Thompson had tried to block her promotion, saying she was too inexperienced. Now he blocked major projects because he thought her progressive policies cut into profits, even though they'd driven record customer satisfaction. She tapped out a quick reply. I'll join from the air. As she set her phone to do not disturb, another text blinked in. Running behind at work might not make Maya's arrival. Can you call her and tell her to take a car service to my place? We'll reimburse. Anger flared in her chest. He was missing their daughter yet again and expected her to be the bearer of bad news. She typed a furious response, then deleted it. After a deep breath, she wrote, I'm flying to Chicago for an emergency board meeting. You need to contact Maya yourself. Please, don't let her down. She hit send and steeled herself. No more nagging, no more tension. She had a job to do and a daughter who depended on both of them. The seatbelt sign dinged and the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're expecting some turbulence ahead. Please return to your seats and keep your seatbelts fastened until the sign is off. The plane shuddered as if agreeing. Diana secured her tablet and notebook, blinking as a jolt ran through the cabin. She leaned back, ear pressed to her headset, and prepared for the board call, her thoughts drifting to Maya standing alone at baggage claim, waiting. Determination settled over her. No matter what turbulence lay ahead, corporate or personal, she would make sure her daughter never felt alone again. The cabin gave a sudden jolt, and Maya felt her chest tighten. A notification popped up on her mother's tablet. Diana's board call had been moved up by 15 minutes because of Thompson's demands. She would have to dial in during this bumpy patch, juggling corporate battles at 35,000 feet. Diana frowned as she fastened her seatbelt, hoping her daughter's journey would be smoother than her own. Meanwhile, 2 aisles back, Maya settled into her window seat on the flight to Los Angeles. She tucked her backpack under the seat in front of her, grateful the middle seat stayed empty. At least that was one small mercy. The aisle seat held an older gentleman who offered a polite nod as she sat down, then returned to his paperback. Maya checked her phone one last time before switching to airplane mode, longing for a message from her dad. His last text was vague, and the silence since left her wondering if she'd find him waiting or scrambling when she landed. She slipped her phone into her sweatshirt pocket and gently set her yellow beanie in her lap. That hat was more than a keepsake. It was sunlight in fabric, a thread that tied her divided world together. As she watched ground crew hustle below, a woman in a tailored suit rushed down the aisle at the last minute, clutching a briefcase. She slid into the now open middle seat and muttered, "Just made it," more to herself than to Maya. Maya offered a polite smile but kept her attention on the runway beyond the window. Crew began the pre-flight ritual, checking seatbelts and overhead bins. The same attendant who'd stripped Maya's hat earlier, Flight Attendant Breslin, straightened her ponytail and approached their row. She motioned to the businesswoman first. "Ma'am, your bag needs to fit completely under the seat," she said, voice firm. The woman obeyed without protest. Then Breslin's gaze settled on Maya's beanie in her lap. "You'll need to stow that or wear it for takeoff and landing," she said, tone clipped. Maya's heart sank, but she kept her voice steady. "Sorry," she whispered, pulling the beanie back onto her head. Breslin's tight nod said everything. Rules were meant to reinforce hierarchy, especially for someone like Maya. Across the aisle, the businessman gave Maya a sympathetic shrug, as if acknowledging the double standard. When the safety demonstration began, Maya forced herself to focus on the oxygen masks and exit rows. But when Breslin reappeared and ordered, "All headwear off until we reach cruising altitude," Maya felt that old sting, being singled out, made to feel less. She glanced at fellow passengers. 2 baseball caps, a knit cap worn by an elderly woman, even a beanie on a fellow teenager. But Breslin ignored them all. She only cared about Maya's bright yellow beanie. A ripple of discomfort passed through Maya's chest. She thought of the countless times she'd faced the same arbitrary enforcement in stores, in classrooms, at her mother's corporate events. She slipped the beanie off and folded it in her lap, smoothing her curls back into place. She noticed a young black woman a few rows ahead watch the exchange with narrowed eyes, then offer Maya a small, encouraging smile. That silent bond reminded Maya she was not alone. As the plane began taxiing, Maya's fingers traced the familiar pattern of the hat in her lap. It was a small act of defiance, to keep that beanie close even when she wasn't allowed to wear it. She inhaled deeply, steeling herself against the injustice. 2 hours and 300 miles later in Los Angeles, Marcus was stuck in gridlock on the freeway by LAX. He'd mapped every possible route, yet he was still 20 minutes from the airport when Maya's flight touched down. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, guilt and frustration battling in his chest. He'd texted her twice, both times the calls went to voicemail. Finally, he left a voice message. "I'm stuck in traffic, wait at baggage claim, love you." Then he raced toward the airport exit. Back on the plane, Maya felt the engines rev for takeoff. She put her beanie back on for the climb, the bright yellow crown a silent promise to herself and her family. She looked out the window as the ground fell away and tears pricked her eyes, not of sadness, but of anger at being treated as less than human. At baggage claim, Marcus scanned every face, then the flight information board. Maya's flight had landed 40 minutes ago, enough time for her to clear customs, collect luggage, and wait. Anxiety knotted his stomach. He rushed to an information desk. "My daughter is 17, he panted. "She's not an unaccompanied minor. She flew in to see me." The attendant's face softened. If you didn't register an escort, she travels as a normal passenger. Check with customer service. They may know where she is." He thanked her and darted toward the customer service counter. In line, he checked his phone again, relief flooding him when he saw a text from Maya. "There's some kind of situation. We'll explain when I see you." His pulse raced. "Situation?" He stalled for a moment, heart thundering, before replying, "I'm at baggage claim. What's happened?" No answer. He swallowed, wiping sweat from his brow, and watched the line inch forward. Every second felt like an hour. On board, Maya pressed the call button as soon as the seatbelt sign clicked off. "Excuse me," she said, voice calm but firm. "Can someone explain why I was singled out for removing my hat when everyone else kept theirs on?" Breslin appeared with a clipboard and the same tight expression. "Safety regulation." Maya held up a hand. "Safety is important, but so is consistency. I followed every instruction. I just want to be treated with the same respect as everyone else." A flight attendant supervisor stepped in, a senior crew member with kind eyes. She glanced between Maya and Breslin. "I understand there was confusion over headwear. I apologize for any distress caused." Maya nodded, relief and vindication washing over her. "Thank you." The supervisor turned to Breslin quietly, and soon afterward Maya felt the atmosphere shift. Passengers offered nods of approval, and Breslin no longer stood so tall. Maya allowed herself a small, triumphant smile as she settled back into her seat. The injustice that had weighed on her chest was lifting. She looked out at the clouds, knowing that she had stood up for herself, and that anyone who tried to diminish her would have to answer to someone greater than they. In the terminal's baggage claim area, Marcus finally reached the customer service desk. His heart pounded as he introduced himself. "I'm looking for my daughter, Maya Williams." The agent typed quickly, then looked up with a small smile. "She checked in with us a few minutes ago. She had a word with one of our supervisors about an in-flight issue and was escorted to the lounge to wait." Marcus exhaled so hard he slumped against the counter. "Thank you," he whispered. He hurried toward the customer lounge, each step lighter than the one before. He opened the door to find Maya sitting calmly, beanie in hand, her brilliant smile greeting him. In that moment, every mile, every tear, every harsh word faded away. They had both faced turbulence, but she had landed stronger, and they were together again. Deanna Williams stared at her phone, heart pounding as she read her assistant's message. Zara's flight had not yet deplaned because of a customer service incident. She tapped out a quick reply, "No, what airline is she on?" Then she leaned back in her seat, mind racing. Her board call was still scheduled in 10 minutes, but her daughter's safety and dignity mattered more than any corporate skirmish. She set her tablet aside and opened the airline's internal emergency contact list, determined to take immediate action. On the other side of the screen, Marcus sat anxiously in the Terminal 4 customer lounge, thumb hovering over his phone. When Diana's reply came, Atlantic Skyways Flight 502 to Los Angeles, he felt a surge of relief mixed with anger. His daughter was aboard his ex-wife's airline, and now it seemed corporate red tape had trapped her. He called the terminal operations manager, explained that Maya Williams was the CEO's daughter, and insisted that the incident be resolved at once. His voice wavered, but he refused to back down. Back on Flight 502, Flight Attendant Breslin stood stiffly by the first-class galley, arms crossed over her chest. She had already been reprimanded by the lead attendant for her heavy-handed enforcement of headwear rules. Now she held Maya's yellow beanie in her hand, face flushed with stubborn defiance. When the supervisor, a calm woman named Angela, approached, Breslin snapped, "I was just following policy." Angela folded her arms, brow furrowed. "Maya's hat was wrongfully confiscated," Angela said quietly. "You failed to apply the policy uniformly. You must apologize and return it immediately." Breslin's lips pressed into a thin line. Around her, passengers began to murmur. many recalling how they too had worn hats or caps with no instruction to remove them. The tension in the cabin crackled like static. Maya sat tense, clutching her backpack, while Vanessa and the older gentleman watched. Angela held Maya's beanie up so all could see. "On behalf of Atlantic Skyways, I apologize for the distress caused to Ms. Williams. This hat is her personal property and a symbol of her family's love. Please accept my sincere apology." She handed the beanie back to a shaken Maya, who placed it gently on her head, tears of relief filling her eyes. A ripple of approval swept through the cabin. Several passengers nodded or offered Maya sympathetic smiles. The older gentleman standing in the aisle cleared his throat. "I have flown this airline for 35 years, he said in a voice rich with experience. "Never once have I seen a passenger singled out in such a way. I commend Ms. Angela for correcting this." His words echoed, and even Breslin's shoulders sagged, as if the weight of his statement had knocked the air out of her. Maya looked first at the gentleman, then at Vanessa, and finally at Angela. "Thank you," she said softly. "I appreciate you standing up for me." Vanessa reached over and gently squeezed Maya's hand. "You didn't deserve any of that," Vanessa whispered. "You handled it with grace." Maya managed a small smile, feeling a fierce pride well up inside her chest. Meanwhile, Diana's phone buzzed. Marcus had managed to escalate the matter on the ground, and the terminal manager texted, "We are sending a ground agent to escort Ms. Williams off the plane as soon as we land. We apologize for the delay." Diana exhaled, relief and frustration mingling. She tapped back, "Thank you. I will address this matter fully upon landing." Then she turned her attention back to the tablet, ready to face Thompson's objections. On the LAX tarmac, the gate agent watched the aircraft dock. A uniformed ground staff member climbed the jetway with purposeful strides. Inside, he announced over the PA, "Ms. Maya Williams of seat 14A, please wait for me by the forward service door after other passengers have deplaned." Maya stood in the aisle, beanie snug on her head, heart hammering with anticipation. As the door opened and the first rows emptied, Maya stepped into the aisle and followed the attendant down the jetway. She realized that this was more than just a hat. It was proof that she had been treated unfairly, simply because of the way she looked. Now the airline itself was setting it right. On the tarmac, she saw the ground staffer waiting with a gentle smile. As they drove, Diana reached over and took Maya's hand. "You showed so much courage back there," she said, "standing up for yourself, holding your head high." Maya glanced at her mother. "I just didn't want to let them treat me like I didn't belong," she said softly. Diana smiled. "You belong everywhere you choose to be, and don't you forget it." Their car turned off the freeway onto a palm-lined boulevard leading to Marcus's home. The late morning light filtered through the windshield, glinting off Maya's yellow beanie. She touched the hat and thought of her father's gift and her mother's fierce defense. The beanie had become a symbol of her identity and resilience. Now, it was also a reminder of the power of speaking up. At the end of the drive, they pulled up at Marcus's new house. Lush succulents lined the walkway, a gift from his neighbor Elena waiting by the door. As they climbed out of the car, Diana opened her tablet and sent a terse message to Stanley Thompson. "Formal complaint filed regarding in-flight discrimination against my daughter. We expect immediate review and corrective action, or we will escalate to the board." She tapped send and looked up at Marcus. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "They need to understand that discrimination will not stand, whether in the boardroom or at 30,000 feet. Marcus nodded, respect and love in his eyes. "I'll back you up, always," he said. Maya slipped her backpack over one shoulder and adjusted her beanie. "Can we just have lunch now?" she asked with a grin. Her parents laughed and followed her through the front door. Inside, the living room smelled faintly of unpacked boxes and fresh paint, but it felt like home. Maya set her beanie on the console table by the door, where it caught the light like a beacon. They settled at the kitchen table, with Elena's succulent on the countertop as a reminder of community. Diana and Marcus exchanged a glance, then turned to Maya. Over sandwiches and iced tea, they talked about her flight, the kindness of strangers like Vanessa, and the satisfaction of watching the airline right their wrong. Maya listened to her parents plan how to track the complaint through customer service channels and board committees, but mostly she felt safe and proud. By the time they finished lunch, the afternoon sun was high. Diana checked her watch. "I need to prepare for tomorrow's board meeting," she said. "But first, I want to make sure everyone involved in this is recognized." The supervisor, Angela, Vanessa, the gentleman who spoke up. "I'll be drafting letters of commendation." Maya smiled. "They deserve it," she said. Marcus poured them each a glass of lemonade. "To courage," he said, raising his glass. Diana and Maya echoed, "To courage." They clinked glasses, laughter filling the room. Later that evening, Maya lay in bed wearing her yellow beanie. Her mother had tucked her in via video call before boarding her red-eye back to Chicago, and her father had promised a special breakfast tomorrow. As she drifted off to sleep, Maya thought of every unjust stare, every whispered comment, and how she had chosen to stand tall instead of shrinking away. The beanie was more than fabric now. It was her banner of hope and resistance. And as the house fell silent around her, Maya knew that no matter where she went, whether above the clouds, through the airport terminals, or into the boardrooms of an airline, she would never again doubt her right to wear her sunshine on her head and her pride in her heart. The gate agent's voice crackled over the PA, and Maya felt her pulse quicken. The man from the airline's customer service team was on his way. She gathered her backpack, smoothing her yellow beanie back into place, and stood alongside Vanessa and the young woman who had offered her a knowing nod earlier. The older gentleman in the aisle seat nodded to her in solidarity before stepping off the plane. Maya's stomach fluttered as she watched other passengers file out around her, some casting sympathetic glances, others pretending not to notice the small group that remained. Flight attendant Breslin hovered near the cockpit door, shoulders squared and jaw clenched, as if daring Maya to make another move. The lead attendant approached them, expression cautious, and gestured toward the jet bridge. "Ms. Williams," she said, voice low but firm, "the customer service manager will meet you on the jet bridge. After that, you are free to leave." Maya nodded. "Thank you," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Vanessa slipped next to her, and the lead attendant guided them down the narrow walkway, Breslin trailing a few steps behind. Once they reached the terminal floor, a man in a crisp suit hurried over, badge gleaming in the overhead lights. He introduced himself as Mr. Carson, Customer Service Director for Atlantic Skyways. His hand was outstretched in apology before he even spoke. "Ms. Williams," he began, "I am deeply sorry for the treatment you experienced aboard Flight 1829. We take such allegations very seriously." He glanced at Vanessa's attorney badge. "I understand you are accompanied by legal counsel?" Vanessa gave a curt nod. "Yes," she said. "We expect a full explanation, a public apology, and corrective action for your flight attendant." Mr. Carson's lips pressed into a thin line. "Of course. I have already instructed that Flight Attendant Breslin undergo immediate bias awareness training. I will file a formal incident report and ensure that our entire cabin crew receives refresher training on uniform policy enforcement." Maya's throat tightened. It was a start, but it wasn't enough. She took a breath and looked Mr. Carson in the eye. "That hat was my connection to home and to my father," she said softly. "It wasn't just a piece of fabric. It was a promise that no matter how far I traveled, I was loved and supported. By making me take it off when everyone else could keep theirs on, Breslin tried to make me feel less than human." The director's expression flickered with unease. "I understand how distressing that must have been." Maya nodded. "I accept your apology, but I need you to take it a step further. I want a public announcement on our flight's manifest, an apology to every passenger for the inconsistent application of policy. I want compensation for my emotional distress, and I want a written guarantee that this will never happen again to me or any other passenger." "Sweetheart," Diana whispered, pressing a kiss to Maya's forehead. "I'm so sorry you had to endure that." Maya shook her head. "They're fixing it," she said, voice steady. "I'm okay now." Marcus wrapped her in a hug. "I missed you," he said into her hair. "I'm sorry I wasn't here." Maya pulled back and looked at him, eyes bright. "You're here now," she said. "That's what matters." Vanessa cleared her throat, and Maya introduced her parents to the attorney. The older gentleman and the young black woman who had offered their support earlier joined them, and a small crowd gathered around. Many passengers who had witnessed the incident now offering words of encouragement. Before leaving the terminal, Diana cleared her throat and tapped her phone. A few moments later, travelers paused as a public address crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen," Diana's calm, authoritative voice rang out over the intercom. "This is Diana Williams, CEO of Atlantic Skyways. I want to apologize directly for the inconsistency in enforcing our headwear policy on Flight 1829 from New York to Los Angeles. We failed to treat all passengers equally, and for that I am truly sorry. We are taking immediate steps to retrain our staff and ensure this never happens again." A ripple of applause echoed through the terminal. Maya felt a swell of pride. Her mother's voice had carried her apology straight to the hearts of every passenger who had witnessed the incident. Mr. Carson approached. "Miss Williams, your requests are formalized and will be delivered to your inbox shortly. Again, I apologize on behalf of Atlantic Skyways." Maya smiled. "Thank you," she said. "I appreciate that." As they stepped out into the bright California afternoon, the group lingered a moment, basking in a shared sense of justice served. Reporters from a local news crew, alerted by Vanessa's organization, had arrived to interview them, capturing the apology and the policy changes live. Maya found herself speaking into a microphone, voice clear and strong. "I wanted my hat back because it mattered to me," she said. "But what mattered more was making sure that no one else would be singled out for who they are or what they wear. I hope Atlantic Skyways learns from this and treats every passenger with dignity and respect." The reporters thanked her, then turned to Diana for comment. The cameras rolled as Diana outlined the company's commitments, compensation, training, and new oversight measures. Footage of flight attendant Breslin standing off to the side contrasted starkly with the triumphant faces of Maya, her parents, and her supporters. It was a scene of accountability and vindication. That evening, back at Marcus's home, Maya sat with her parents at the kitchen table. The news coverage played on the TV in the background, scrolling headlines praising her courage and Atlantic Skyways' swift response. Diana raised her glass of iced tea. "To Maya," she said, voice thick with pride, "for standing up when it mattered most." Marcus clinked his glass with his daughters. "To justice," he said. Maya grinned, her yellow beanie perched on the table beside her. "And to sunshine," she added. They laughed, and for the first time since the ordeal began, Maya felt a lightness in her chest. She had faced discrimination head-on and emerged not just unbroken but empowered. Her parents enveloped her in warmth and love, and the beanie, once a target of cruelty, now lay like a trophy of resilience. As they finished dinner, Diana excused herself to review the final incident report, and Marcus helped Maya clear the table. Later, Maya climbed into bed, the soft glow of her bedside lamp illuminating the beanie on her dresser. She reached out and touched it, thinking of every person who had stood by her. Vanessa, the older gentleman, the young woman who had smiled, and of course her parents. She closed her eyes, a contented smile on her lips. Tomorrow she would wear that beanie again, walking into a world that had been reminded of her worth. and no matter where her travels took her next, she would carry that victory and that bright bit of sunshine right on top of her head. Maya's legs trembled as she stepped from the jet bridge into the bright terminal light. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a frantic drumbeat. Behind her, Vanessa and the young woman who had shared that quiet nod gathered their bags with calm resolve. Flight attendant Breslin lingered near the cockpit door, shoulders squared and jaw tight, watching Maya with steely eyes. Across from them, Mr. Carson, the customer service manager, hovered in his navy suit, badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. He offered Maya a hesitant nod that felt more like an indictment than an apology, and beyond the glass doors, Marcus's face lit up with relief. "Dad," Maya whispered, voice catching on the word. Marcus closed the gap in 2 strides and wrapped her in a hug that made her world tilt back into place. His embrace was fierce, as though he could shield her from 1,000 injustices at once. Maya clutched his shirt, her yellow beanie pressed warm against her forehead, and felt tears slide free. "What happened?" he asked, voice low and urgent. Before Maya could explain, the terminal doors parted again, and everyone turned. The silence stretched taut between them. Mr. Carson opened his mouth, closed it again. The word apology hovered unspoken on his lips. Diana's gaze flicked to Breslin, who shrank under the weight of her mother's glare. Without a word, Diana gestured toward the VIP lounge elevators. Maya felt Marcus's hand on her arm, guiding her forward, Vanessa at her side, and followed each step like it was a march toward justice. Inside the private lounge, the air smelled faintly of polished wood and craft coffee. Diana sat at the head of a long conference table, her back as straight as an arrow, eyes blazing with controlled anger. Maya took the chair to her right, yellow beanie in her lap, shoulders still shaking. To Diana's left, Marcus fidgeted with a pen, face pale as he tried to steady his shaking hands. Across from them sat Bradford Mills, the station manager, who looked as though he might bolt at any second. And beside him, flight attendant Breslin stared at the table, trapped by her own guilt. Diana's voice was smooth steel as she began. "Let me make something absolutely clear. Whether or not Maya is my daughter is irrelevant. What matters is that one of our passengers was singled out and humiliated in front of dozens of guests while no other traveler faced the same treatment. That is unacceptable." Bradford exhaled sharply. "Miss Williams, you have my word we will investigate immediately. We owe you and your daughter an explanation." Diana's lips curved into a faint smile that carried no warmth. "The investigation is already in motion. I want a written report on my desk by Monday morning, including statements from every crew member and passenger who witnessed the incident." Her gaze snapped to Breslin. "Flight attendant Breslin, I am still waiting for your account." Breslin lifted her head, eyes brimming with tears. "Ms. Williams, I was following what I believed to be company policy on head coverings during safety demonstrations. If I misinterpreted the guidelines, I apologize." Diana's tone sharpened. "Misinterpreted implies the policy exists. I personally reviewed our passenger conduct handbook last month. There is no rule barring beanies unless the item prevents you from fitting an oxygen mask. My daughter's beanie did not obstruct anything." Breslin's face burned with shame. "I must have been misinformed," she whispered. "Misinformed," Diana repeated slowly, letting the word hang like a verdict. "And you enforced this misunderstanding only against Maya Williams. Witnesses, including an attorney seated beside her, confirm you made no such demand of any other passenger." Breslin's shoulders slumped, tears sliding down her cheeks. The room felt smaller, as though Diana's anger had squeezed the walls inward. Marcus cleared his throat. "Diana, perhaps we should let this rest. Maya's weary and we have plans for tonight." Diana's eyes softened at the mention of plans. She exhaled, nodding once. "You're right, this discussion is exhausting." Bradford rose, offering his hand. "I will ensure my team follows every instruction. Again, our deepest apologies to you and Maya." Diana stood, lifting her chin. Not to me, she said, voice firm, but to Maya, who endured this humiliation. All eyes turned to Maya, who felt her cheeks burn under the glare. Breslin blinked back tears and addressed Maya directly. "I am truly sorry for the distress I caused you," she said, voice small. Maya nodded, voice barely a whisper. "Thank you. I accept your apology." Breslin's nod was barely perceptible as she bowed her head. They left the conference room into a small lounge area where Vanessa waited. The attorney's face lit up when she saw Maya. "I wanted to make sure you were safe before I caught my flight," she said. Maya forced a tired smile. "Thanks to you," she murmured. Vanessa shook her head. "No one should have to face that alone," she said, then extended her hand. "Vanessa Chen, Equal Justice Initiative." Diana stepped forward and clasped Vanessa's hand firmly. "Deanna Williams," she replied. "Thank you for advocating for my daughter." Outside the VIP area, a handful of passengers gathered with soft smiles and nods of support. The older gentleman from first class approached with an earnest grin. "Young lady, you handled yourself with remarkable grace," he said, voice warm. "I'll be filing a complaint myself." Maya's chest tightened with gratitude and relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick. The gentle solidarity of strangers wrapped around her like a blanket, easing the sting of her ordeal. That evening, they gathered in the cozy living room of Marcus's new home. Soft California light filtered through the windows, casting patterns on the hardwood floors. The TV played news coverage, sound bites of Diana's public apology, promises of retraining, headlines praising Maya's dignity under fire. Diana, Marcus, and Maya sat side by side on a plush sofa, glasses of iced tea in hand, the anchor declared. Atlantic Skyways CEO Deanna Williams apologizes for inconsistent enforcement of headwear policy on Flight 1829. Pledges comprehensive bias training across the airline. Diana raised her glass in a toast. "To Maya," she said, voice thick with pride. Marcus lifted his glass. "To justice," he added. Maya touched the brim of her yellow beanie resting on the coffee table like a trophy. "And to sunshine," she said with a shy grin. They clinked glasses, the sound ringing with the promise of new beginnings. Later, in the quiet of the guest room, Maya laid her beanie on the bedside table. The lamp's glow made it look like a crown. She climbed into the bed, hugging a soft pillow, and let her thoughts drift back over the day's events. The abrupt stripping of her hat, the cold glare of flight attendant Breslin, her mother's fierce intervention, the courtroom atmosphere of the VIP lounge. She remembered Vanessa's steady support, the older gentleman's kind words, and most of all, her parents' unwavering love. Maya touched the beanie as she closed her eyes. She whispered to it, "We did this together." Sleep came easily, soothed by the knowledge that she had stood tall against injustice and emerged stronger. She closed her eyes, fingers tracing the patterned knit of her beanie. Today was not just another trip. It was a testament to her courage and to the power of speaking truth to authority. No matter where she traveled next, through crowded airports, into corporate boardrooms, or simply into the everyday world, she would carry her sunshine on her head and her pride in her heart, knowing that discrimination could be confronted and defeated. And with that thought, Maya fell into a peaceful half-sleep, the road stretching ahead of them like a ribbon of promise. Maya tucked the tip of her yellow beanie beneath her chin as she and Marcus stepped out into the warm evening air. The sky overhead was a dusky pink, California palm trees swaying gently against the sunset. For a moment, the chaos of the past week seemed as distant as the Manhattan skyline. Vanessa's parting words still rang in Maya's ears. "Don't lose my card, okay? And remember, your voice matters." Maya reached into her pocket and felt the smooth edge of the business card Vanessa had pressed into her hand. She smiled at the memory of that calm presence, of the attorney who had stepped up for her when others turned away. Marcus slipped an arm around her shoulders. "You hungry?" he asked, voice light for the first time in hours. Maya laughed softly, the tension loosening in her chest. "Starving," she admitted. Marcus led the way down the corridor toward the terminal exit. "I know a great burger place not far from here," he said, "but first let's grab that postcard you wanted." He steered her toward a newsstand just inside the arrivals hall, rows of postcards glittering under bright display lights. Maya scanned the racks. Scenes of Venice Beach sunset, Hollywood Boulevard basking in neon, and quaint roadside diners competed for her attention. Finally, she selected a card showing a vintage propeller plane soaring through cotton candy clouds. She tucked it carefully into her backpack and turned to her father with a grin. "This will say thanks to Vanessa," she said. "She deserves it." The next morning, the late morning sun cast golden beams through the lace curtains as Maya packed her suitcase for the flight back to New York. She folded her new wardrobe, purchased to reflect the confidence she now felt, into neat stacks. Her yellow beanie rested atop her clothes, no longer a symbol of shame, but of triumph. Marcus stood in the doorway, admiration in his gaze. "You sure you don't want to extend your stay?" he asked gently. "Your mom said switching flights would be fine." Maya looked at her father, the memories of their week together flooding her heart. The postcard for Vanessa, the burger joint conversations, the laughter at the corporate event. "I can't miss school," she said, "but this trip was unforgettable. Different from what I expected, but so good." Marcus nodded, pride swelling in his chest. He stepped into the room and perched on the edge of the bed beside her suitcase. He began, voice thick with emotion. Maya turned her head, curious. Marcus took a breath. "You changed so much in these 6 months. You taught me, so many people, how to stand up for what's right." His words caught in his throat. Maya reached for his hand. "We learned together," she said softly. "Thanks for being there." Over the past week, Marcus had been her anchor. He had flanked her in meetings with Atlantic Skyway's staff, fielded calls from reporters, and quietly helped her process the whirlwind of feelings that followed the Beanie incident. "You've been pretty amazing too, Dad," Maya said, a hint of laughter in her tone. "I know this was not your idea of a fun visit." He laughed, shaking his head. "I had surfing lessons and art studio tours lined up, not corporate crisis management and media training." Maya giggled. "Maybe next time we keep it low-key." He ruffled her hair. "Definitely next time. Though maybe we leave out the airline drama." They shared a warm moment, planning a summer visit when Maya could explore California's redwoods, desert landscapes, and that little burger joint they'd discovered near the airport. "I want this to be your home away from home," Marcus said, watching her fold a t-shirt into her suitcase. "Next time I'll repaint your room, hang up your posters, make this feel like your space." Maya's eyes glistened with gratitude. As they drove to the airport, the conversation drifted to school, friends, and what she was looking forward to most when she returned to New York. Maya felt a bright calm settle over her. The incident that had upended her visit was now just one chapter in a story of transformation. At the airport, they were greeted curbside by an Atlantic Skyways representative in navy slacks and a crisp white shirt. "Ms. Williams," she said with a respectful nod, "your mother asked me to ensure your comfort today. Your check-in is ready and you have access to the executive lounge." Maya offered a small smile. "Thank you, that is very kind." The rep bowed and departed, leaving Maya to marvel at how her identity had shifted in the eyes of an entire airline. Marcus slipped an arm around her as they walked into the lounge. "VIP treatment," he teased gently. "I still cannot believe they treated you this way in the first place." Maya nodded, picking up a ginger ale from the counter. "It still stings," she admitted. "Being singled out like that, it felt like they saw me as less." Marcus's expression tightened. "You should have had to face none of it." They lingered over small sandwiches and sparkling water, watching the bustle of travelers as Maya's heart filled with warmth at her father's steadfast presence. "I've been thinking about something your mom said," Marcus said after a moment. "She noted that this could have happened to anyone's child, but it happened to you." Maya looked at him, puzzled. It did happen to you, not just the CEO's daughter, but you, Maya Williams, he said firmly. I am so proud of how you handled it, he continued, pride shining in his voice. Not just in that moment when your hat was taken, but in all the moments after. You spoke up in meetings, you insisted on real policy changes, and you reminded everyone why it matters. Maya swallowed the lump in her throat. Mom made the big changes happen, Maya protested, lowering her gaze. She has the corporate power. Marcus reached out, lifting her chin until she met his eyes. Your mom may have the title, but you are the one who stood up and spoke your truth. You are the one who refused to let them silence you. Maya blinked back tears, seeing herself through her father's proud eyes. They hugged again before boarding time. Standing at the security checkpoint, Marcus pulled Maya into a tight embrace. I love you, kiddo. Yellow beanie and all, he said, voice thick. Maya clung to him. I love you too, Dad, she whispered, surprised by her tears. Thanks for everything this week. He released her and offered a warm smile. Always. Maya walked through security with measured steps, placing her beanie on her head with quiet defiance and pride. That simple knit cap had become more than a fashion choice. It was a beacon of her voice, her resilience, and the unity her family had found in adversity. Boarding the plane back to New York, she was greeted by a flight attendant who offered a genuine smile. Welcome aboard, Ms. Williams, he said as he scanned her boarding pass. We are honored you flew with us today. Maya returned the smile, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. She took the window seat and gazed at the California sunshine receding in the distance. Memories of the past week filled her mind. Her mother's fierce arrival, the corporate showdown, Vanessa's support, her father's unwavering presence. The yellow beanie perched on her head reminded her of every step of that journey. Meanwhile, back at Atlantic Skyway's headquarters in Atlanta 6 months later, Diana Williams moved through the busy corridors with a refreshed sense of purpose. The Everyone Belongs in the Sky campaign was in full swing. Employees greeted her with nods and smiles. She returned their enthusiasm, knowing how far they had come. In her glass-walled office, her assistant Michael waited with a tablet. Board members are dialed in for the quarterly review call, Michael said, tapping the screen. Also, these arrived for you. He gestured to a gorgeous arrangement of yellow flowers on her desk. Diana approached the bouquet, lifting one blossom to her nose. From the PR team, she guessed. Michael shook his head with a small smile. No, from Marcus and Maya. The card reads, To the woman who turns turbulence into transformation, we are so proud of you. Diana's throat tightened as she read the card. The words captured the heart of the journey, how a family crisis had sparked airline-wide change and personal reconciliation. She sat at her desk, reflecting on the 6-month transformation. The yellow beanie incident had been a crucible, forcing her to acknowledge that her daughter still faced biases she could not erase with a memo or a policy. Instead, she had turned that moment of pain into an opportunity for real progress. She tapped her phone. A text from Maya blinked on the screen. Saw the coverage of your press event. You killed it, Mom. P.S. Did you get the flower? Diana smiled, typing back. Just now. Thank you. Another text followed immediately. Yellow for transformation, not just sunshine. Diana paused, her heart warmed. That yellow beanie had taken on new meaning for all of them. She opened a drawer and pulled out a framed photo taken at the hangar during Maya's first visit after the incident. In it, mother and daughter stood side by side beneath a plane bearing the new campaign livery, Diana in her CEO suit and Maya in her yellow hat, a symbol of different generations united by courage. The board call began. Diana joined with a calm, clear voice, leading the discussion on financials and cultural metrics. But in her mind, she carried that image of Maya's bright head and her own determined smile. The policies they implemented, training programs, hiring practices, anonymous reporting channels, quarterly culture audits, and a diverse passenger advisory board. were more than line items. They were promise made real. On the other end of the call, board members nodded approval. Their company was not just profitable, it was accountable. It had faced its faults and emerged stronger. And at its heart was a family's love and a teenager's resolve. Later that afternoon, Diana stepped into her corner office and closed the door. She leaned against the desk, folding her hands over her heart. She whispered, "Thank you, Maya," to the quiet room, imagining her daughter's bright smile and fierce determination. Back on the flight to New York, Maya drifted in and out of sleep, her yellow beanie snug on her head. When the seatbelt sign dinged, she opened her eyes to find the flight attendant's warm nod of recognition. "Thank you for flying with us," he said as he walked by. Maya nodded, a contented smile spreading across her face. As the plane descended through pink clouds into JFK, Maya's heart soared. She was no longer just a teenage passenger on a flight. She was Maya Williams, a young woman who had stood her ground, bridged her parents' worlds, and helped reshape an airline's culture. And she carried that knowledge and that bright bit of sunshine down the aisle with every confident step she took. Maya closed her eyes and let the hum of the engines soothe her nerves as the plane climbed through 35,000 feet of sky. In that moment, she understood just how far the yellow beanie incident had carried her. Far beyond a single aisle. Far beyond the narrow confines of one airline's policy room. What could have been dismissed as yet another story of racial bias had instead ignited a reckoning that resonated from the hangar in New York to the boardrooms of Atlanta and into the hearts of passengers around the world. It began with flight attendant Breslin's cruel decision to wrench that bright yellow cap from Maya's head. A gesture so arbitrary that it spoke louder than any words. The glint in Breslin's eyes when she blocked Maya's reach with her foot revealed a deeper cruelty, a willingness to wield authority to humiliate. Passengers watched in uneasy silence, some shifting uncomfortably, others leering, as if Maya's pain were a form of entertainment. That moment of public shaming carved a wound that demanded a response far more powerful than a mere apology. That response came when Diana Williams, Maya's mother and CEO of Atlantic Skyways, stormed the jet bridge in a charcoal suit that spoke of command and conviction. She confronted the airline's customer service manager with a question that echoed down the corridor. Why was my daughter singled out for a policy that no one else had to obey? The hush that followed was a victory in itself. Breslin's face, once flushed with authority, drained of color, and Maya felt a surge of relief wash through her. In the VIP lounge, the confrontation escalated into a board-level showdown. Diana demanded immediate action, a formal apology to Maya, administrative leave for Breslin, and a full investigation with witness statements from every passenger and crew member. Breslin's defense crumbled under the weight of multiple corroborating accounts, including that of an attorney seated beside Maya, revealing that the headwear rule was a fiction applied only to a young black woman. As Breslin stammered her apology, Maya sat between her parents, her yellow beanie resting in her lap like a trophy reclaimed. The aftermath of that crisis was nothing short of revolutionary. Atlantic Skyways rolled out "Everyone Belongs in the Sky," a campaign that replaced hollow slogans with real, measurable change. Every employee completed a comprehensive bias awareness program developed with the Equal Justice Initiative. The airline instituted transparent reporting for any future incidents of discrimination, quarterly culture audits to track progress, and a passenger advisory board representing communities of color, women, seniors, and those with disabilities. Even the corporate dress code was revisited to ensure it honored passenger safety without perpetuating outdated biases. Across the industry, competitors watched in awe as Atlantic Skyways reported a 15% increase in bookings. Analysts called the company's turnaround a textbook case in crisis management and corporate responsibility. Yet for Maya, the most profound shift was personal. She had started that week as a teenager traveling alone, Anxious about custody battles and time changes, she ended it as an advocate whose voice carried weight in board meetings and whose story inspired flight attendants in training to seek employment. One evening at the headquarters launch event, Maya sat between Marcus and Vanessa Chen from the Equal Justice Initiative. A nervous young flight attendant approached her, glass of sparkling water in hand. "I wanted to thank you," the trainee said. "Your courage is why I applied here. I want to be part of real change." Maya's heart swelled. She realized that her refusal to be silenced had opened doors for others to step through. Back on that return flight, Maya watched the California coast shrink beneath the wing and reflected on her journey. The yellow beanie was no longer merely a gift from her father. It was a symbol of transformation. It embodied the moment she refused to accept injustice, the moment her mother used corporate power to right a wrong, and the moment an entire airline chose accountability over complacency. As the plane touched down at JFK and the engines throttled down, Maya felt a surge of triumph. Walking through the terminal, she carried herself with a new confidence. When the flight attendant who greeted her at the gate offered a genuine smile and said, "Welcome back, Ms. Williams," Maya returned the warmth, knowing she was welcomed not just by title, but by a company committed to true equality. Later, standing in her Manhattan apartment, Maya placed the yellow beanie on a special shelf alongside the postcard she had sent to Vanessa and a seashell she picked up on that first evening in California. Each memento told a part of her story, a narrative of pain turned into purpose. She touched the beanie gently, recalling how it once weighed her down with humiliation and now buoyed her with hope. In her mother's office across the country, Deanna prepared for a quarterly board review call. On her desk sat a bouquet of yellow flowers from Marcus and Maya, accompanied by a card that read, "To the woman who turns turbulence into transformation." Deanna smiled as she dialed in, ready to report on the progress that had begun with a single, courageous stand. And so the true legacy of the yellow beanie was born. Not just a symbol of what had happened, but a beacon for what could be possible when voices are heard, when biases are confronted, and when every person, no matter their background, age, or accent, truly belongs in the sky.